This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
There was no hammer, and no hammer was ever coming. No hammer is forthcoming, but the future is very bright for Michigan football. I'm sure Bucknuts and Sparties will rejoice. We'll share and discuss next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Connor. Waits for it. Gets caught.
They said you can't beat Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, and a touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him, and a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. We're going to be joined by a special guest, my good friend Isaiah Hole from Wolverines Wire and Locked On Wolverines, coming up in the next segment of the show, because nobody, and I mean nobody, has done a better job covering the story, the scandal, the subterfuge, the drama surrounding Connor Stalions and Michigan football and the NCAA investigation over the last 2 years than Isaiah has, because he's had the best source of them all, Connor Stalions himself. All right, so he'll join us here in the next segment. But before we get to that conversation and its specificity, let us take a step back on where things are with Michigan football overall. Because all we've heard is vacated wins, the hammer is dropping, asterisk by your championship. A couple things you need to know. Number one, if Connor Stalions' dad wore a condom the night he was supposed to be conceived, none of the current Bucknuts or Sparties that currently are polluting your feeds cultically with hammer is dropping. None of the Brohio wannabes, none of them, would suddenly be in your mentions saying, hey, you guys did great. Congratulations. Really honorable national championship. Hope we get you guys next year. I mean, the last few years, you guys have handed this to us. Respect, you know, you guys are a great program and happy for you. We're just coming for you next year, guys. So peace out. Was never going to happen. All right. That's just the nature of how this works. So get over that, right? Ari Wasserman is a clown. And frankly, he's utterly destroyed the Andy Staples podcast to the point it's just absolutely unlistenable. And I say this as an Andy Staples fan. But I mean, you try listening, Ari breaks in, interrupts, has the absolute most banal, vapid points. He was better off being left off that podcast. It's unlistenable now. Stuart Mandel blocked me on X 6 or 7 years ago when I pointed out to him that Rashawn Gary was claiming a major program offered him $400K on signing day not to sign with Michigan. I'm not saying it was Clemson. It may have been Clemson. Maybe it wasn't. We'll never know, but it probably was. And I asked him, hey, you guys are so concerned about Harbaugh's comments and stuff all the time, Stewie. When are you going to cover this? His response, the typical alpha male response, he blocked me, right? Pat Forty stood by and doom scrolled in a mask while his daughter lost an NCAA swim meet to a dude in makeup. All right. So you'll forgive me if I could not care less what any of these people think of our program. None. And nor should you. In fact, here's what you should do. Go watch last year's Rose Bowl again. Go watch last year's Ohio State game again. And they all occurred in the exact same calendar year, 2024. Watch the national championship again. Maybe buy another shirt. Frame another piece of memorabilia. Who cares? Who cares what the people who hate you and are never going to like you, never respect you? Who cares what they think? In fact, you ought to be thinking about this. Right before we started taping today, Michigan got a commitment from the number one running back recruit in America. I guess the Tom Fornelli take of, well, Michigan won't have enough money to sign the kids now because of the fines. That lasted all of about 2 days. Wrong again. All right. These guys are just all wrong a lot. And frankly, I like Tom Fornelli and his show way more than any of the other guys. But it just goes to show. All right. A lot of times these guys in these national networks and shows have no idea what is really happening specifically within your program. You do. Right. So these are bright days. Michigan signed the number one overall consensus quarterback recruit in the last class, just is about to sign the number one overall consensus running back recruit in the incoming class. And I don't know if you guys know football or not, but those are the two guys that handle the ball more than anybody else on a team. So that's a good sign, right? The future is very bright. A lot of young talent. Sharon is recruiting at a tremendous clip. You saw last year, despite the struggles at the start, the mismanagement, frankly, of the quarterback situation at the start, you saw the way they kept that program together, kept fighting all the way to the end. And, one thing I have heard Tom Fornelli say, so I'll give him credit here. This is a good national take. He said, hey, other than Ohio State, find me a team who's happier about the way their season concluded last year than Michigan is. I mean, Michigan didn't make the playoff, but ended up, beating Ohio State in Columbus, beating Alabama, signing Bryce Underwood. So a lot of momentum heading into this program, heading into this season, a ton of young talent. It's a very young team that Michigan's going to put on the field here in about 11 days, but a very talented one as well. You're signing difference makers. Steve Wilfong calling Savion Hyder the most explosive player in the 2026 recruiting class. That's the number one recruiting scout for Rivals.com, formerly of 24/7. So there's a ton to be proud of, a ton to be optimistic about. And not only is there no hammer, but we're about to drop the hammer on our opponents here when we kick off the 2025 season. Go Blue. Folks, the best way to support us here at Michigan Podcast is to do so via our Patreon page, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. We are posting picks there year round, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's college basketball, whether it's the NFL, and of course, college football. Our win total best bets, you would have gotten those, for example, before the market moved. About half the books in the last few days moved on Texas under 10.5 down to 9.5. If you were following us on Patreon when we posted that, you would have gotten that before that number moved, right? So we give you all kinds of great data and picks, PGA major picks as well. We've cashed 8 of the last 11 majors in professional golf. So if you want to support us on our Patreon page, it's just $10 a month there at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's right, just $10 a month. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. And thank you so very much if you're one of our supporters already. So what now that the report is final from the NCAA? Michigan will appeal. There's been a lot of talk now, plenty of stuff being posted on Michigan message boards that are trending on Message Board Geniuses on social media after Ohio State and Sparty message boards were starring vehicles on that site over the last couple of years. So what's truth? What's stranger than fiction? Let's talk to the guy who's had the best sources on this story, melodrama, saga, scandal, whatever you want to call it, from the very beginning, because he had the best source of them all. Connor Stalions himself. Isaiah Hole is here with us from Locked On Wolverines, Wolverines Wire. Good to see you, my friend. It's long overdue to make this connection the other way. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Well, I was starting, you said guy with the best sources. I started looking around. I said, Premier Drum's going to be on this show? I had no idea.
Third Day Investigations is here live? No.
Well, yeah, man, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
All right, so let's get to it. Let's just start with a very basic question, open-ended, and we'll take the conversation from there. What's next?
Well, what's next? Obviously, you have the appeal as far as the Michigan part's concerned, and that's going to probably take close to another year. And that, we'll see where that leads. I think that in part that's not just because they're trying to, appeal the process. Because you're appealing the same authority. I know it's a different panel essentially as than the COI. It's a completely different panel, but you're still appealing the same organization. So at that point, I think if you're Michigan, you're going to see if they have some kind of wits about them and decide, we don't want the next step. So we're going to try to appease the entity here being Michigan, because the next step then would be to take it to actual court and get full discovery. Mm-hmm. I think the funniest thing is seeing some of the rival fans who have been churning up all of this discord all along and acting like they knew a bunch of stuff that just wasn't true and have egg on their face and are still trying to spin it, is they seem to think that Michigan would not want discovery. No, Michigan 100% wants discovery. They want to be able to, they don't feel like they got due process in this. Yeah, did they get heard in the COI? They did, but then the COI went back and did a whole bunch of stuff that made it clear that they didn't care what they heard. They were sticking to student athlete one's testimony and saying we didn't find this person to be credible, but they're not credible enough to sink Chris Partridge, but it's credible enough to sink everything else. Mm-hmm. So I think that Michigan is going to do everything it can to kind of level the playing field as far as that's concerned. In the PR battle, I think we're just kind of waiting to see what kind of comes of all the message board fodder. Because there is more than message board fodder. You and I can attest to this very directly, that not necessarily everything that's being put out there is accurate. And certainly there's some things muddying up the waters in terms of, I'll say it right here. The whistleblower was not Caden McNamara. I know that was a popular thing on one of the message boards.
Or Mike Hart. Mike Hart was another one. Mike Hart.
No, yeah. Not neither of those guys. So, get that out of your head right now. But there is, I without actually putting a name to things, I think people can understand when they start to read the report and understand just everything that happened, who is student athlete one. I think you can put 2 and 2 together without us necessarily saying anything. So I think that that's the next step. Now, there are people from a national perspective who are trying to put things together. I think that you have to kind of look at it as the NCAA levying its punishment is the beginning of that process, right? Because some of these things could not be spoken of. They couldn't talk to some of these people, whether it's on the record, I guess off the record to some degree, until the process had kind of completed. So people that are saying well, where has this been? Why hasn't this come out a long time ago? Well, these things can now come out because the NCAA has done its part. And even though Michigan's appealing, I think it's opened up the ability for some of these people to get some access to some of the things that they weren't going to get while Michigan and Connor and all of these people were under NCAA investigation. So that's the next step as far as trying to figure out essentially to counter the narrative that's been put out there in the first place that was made significantly more sensational. Preaching to the choir here, but made significantly more sensational than it was ever should have been. And you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, but certainly you can show that there's a heck of a lot more of the story than what even the NCAA is willing to admit. And the NCAA knows this. That's the thing that's kind of troubling. The NCAA knows this. That's why they don't want to go to discovery. Mm-hmm. They know the whole story. And they're just hoping that everyone will just kind of forget about it. Michigan will take its lumps, move on, and go from there. I don't think that's going to end up being the case here.
You mentioned a name, Isaiah, that I think is absolutely a Rosetta Stone here, and that's Michigan's former linebackers coach, Chris Partridge, who in my view should still be the linebackers coach. I've maintained all along, I thought that he was done dirty based on everything I had heard. But for people that don't remember, he was let go the Friday before the Maryland game. Because he was alleged to have coached or approached players in his position group on how to essentially either deceive, flat out lie, obfuscate questioning from NCAA investigators. The ironic thing is the player that he kind of got bullied by the NCAA into outing him went out the very next game and blocked a punt against Maryland, if I recall. So that timing was very ironic. But for people that don't know the timeline here, when Sharon deleted his text, there was no investigation yet. All right. And so the most damning accusation against Michigan after an official investigation began was this allegation against a member of the coaching staff that 3 weeks after the story broke, now with a full-bore investigation ongoing, Chris Partridge was coaching players on how to couch their testimony to at least throw the NCAA off the scent, if not flat out lie to them, right? He was immediately dismissed, everything else. Well, he's exonerated by this report. And I just think that's not being highlighted enough. Because that's the most damning allegation against the Michigan program since the investigation began is, hey, well, they were still trying to get around everything and avoid accountability, telling the players to lie to the NCAA. Turns out that never happened, which I think then begs the question, if they were wrong about the most serious allegation levied against Michigan once the investigation began, then what else are they wrong about?
Yeah, 100%. And I do want to clear up too, and I don't remember everything about the Maryland game, but like Christian Boy Van, who we were led to believe was the one who had blown the whistle on this, was also not the whistleblower, right? Like there was just so many twists and turns, but it's funny because I remember being on the sidelines of that Maryland game and just talking to an ESPN reporter that I trust a lot and is not adversarial to the program or anything like that. And, he had already all of the talking points, and it wasn't because like he was trying to paint Michigan in negative light, but he had all the talking points that were to come from all of that. Right. Like, he's like, I heard he was in there destroying evidence. I heard that he was, that he was going to every player and telling him exactly what to do and all of this stuff. Like, he didn't come up with that on his own. He heard it from other parties that led him to believe that. And that didn't pass the smell test for me. So yes, that is kind of the Rosetta Stone. And it is interesting because one of the things that people don't look at is what is Michigan ultimately in trouble for? Why are the biggest penalties coming here? Outside of the things that you have mentioned frequently about trying to find a competitive advantage, which in and of itself is not an actual violation of any rule. It's because of failure to cooperate. And, that was Chris Partridge was considered the poster boy of that. Now, Connor Stalions and Jim Harbaugh were also considered that, but they were no longer at the times that they were being questioned. They were even no longer with the program. And yet Michigan's the ones that's kind of being dinged for that still. Right. Like Michigan can't really enforce them to do anything when they're no longer with the program. So I think that gets lost in the sauce as well. But yeah, I think that more people need to be paying attention to the Chris Partridge part of it all, because like you said, like that was the name that was considered to be the biggest part until Harbaugh is not cooperating. And, it had long been said Stalions wasn't cooperating. And that was laughable to, I think, both of us at the time, because like you and I both knew, like, no one had contacted him.
Yeah, no one even contacted him. Neither the NCAA, the University of Michigan didn't contact him at all. Let him walk out of the building without any kind of an interview or anything of that nature. Yeah. Yeah.
So at that point, it was like neither are not cooperating, but the NCAA was just intent on finding ways to punish Michigan one way or the other. Right. So it went with failure to cooperate before anyone had ever even bothered to ask anyone these questions. Tom Mars has pushed back a lot on the Jim Harbaugh part, but really like the somewhat smoking gun of the entire thing levied on Chris Partridge being this poster child for it, because look, there it is. There's a guy who supposedly not only telling players to lie, but destroying evidence. And turns out that they didn't have that. And then they tack on a bunch of recruiting things and things of that nature. And that's where they got Michigan and a couple other things, right? The Denard Robinson recruiting thing. Partridge was also exonerated for the recruiting parts, right? Like, they didn't know that until the COI. You know, they went in and thinking like, oh, we got him. And then there was some video that was produced, and suddenly, like, it's like, oh, well, we can't deem you guilty because there's video that proves all of the things we're accusing you of are not accurate. So they don't have that in a lot of cases here. Like, right. Like, I want to go back and even just note, like, even with Connor and all of this, like, they don't even have evidence that he was actually using anything. They only have evidence that he essentially got some buddies to go to some games, that he got his mom to sit, as we both joke constantly, to sit in row 37E at Ross-Ade Stadium. Right. That itself is not a violation.
Hope Mama Stalions doesn't need a potty break. Her arm doesn't get tired, because any point in time she takes her phone off of that sideline, Isaiah, the whole pattern is broken and we're starting all over again. But nevertheless, continue. Yes.
Yeah. It, like, to that point too, that they deem that it's a violation of the rule because he had intent to gain a competitive advantage, and then in the very next breath say, but he did not gain a competitive advantage based off of what we saw in the second half. Then what are we doing here?
Well, I think what we're going to do, Justin Tress is going to have our team lifting less weights because we don't want to try to gain a competitive advantage.
Yeah, it's just all so farcical. And, you know, I try to be very, you know, genteel when it comes to these things, right? Like, I know there's a lot of other people.
Yes, you're nicer than me. Now, everybody knows that. We know that. You are nicer than me. Yes.
But people do it to a fault because they don't want to seem like they're crazy, right? Like they want the applause of people that hate them, right? Like I want to be reasonable.
Yes. I'm not like those people. Yeah.
And that's just it. This isn't really the time to do that because it's just obvious. And now, you know, right now we are going to live with the NCAA's decision. See what the appeal does. I hope that it goes to discovery. I don't think Michigan has anything to hide. I think the problem more so is you had a mixture of the NCAA and the Big Ten jumping into the middle of something in the middle of the season, saying like, here are the facts as we know them. And Michigan was learning at the same time as anyone else. And that caused a lot of panic. That caused a panic firing of Chris Partridge. Mm-hmm. That caused, I think Michigan to not do something that I think it normally would have done, which is interview Connor Stalions, find out, okay, what actually happened before, you know, so that we have our own record. Like some people say, oh, you don't want to do that. Like, why wouldn't you do that? It doesn't have to be department wide, but at least, you know, Doug Notke sitting down with Connor Stalions, getting his version and saying, okay, here's what we have. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there so that people can, you know, not throw this out there, but I can judge this based off of, you know, NCAA can say this, here's what we actually know. Here's what we think we know, all of that. Michigan didn't have any of that because all of this was happening in real time. They were drinking through a fire hose as much as anyone else. They're learning all of these things at the same time. They don't even fight the TRO anymore because it's believed at that point that Chris Partridge is deceiving. And they were like, well, what are we doing? This
is a great point on the timing of all of this, is what the Partridge news did to kind of debilitate all of the esprit de corps that Michigan had about uniting to fight this at the time. And then, oh crap, one of our guys got caught throwing his pot stash, flushing it down the toilet in the boys' locker room. So now we're screwed. Everybody, we're outed here, right? That's a great point that you just made there. Is Michigan just all of that unity and everything that we saw that resolve, which frankly we had never seen anything like that on an administrative level at Michigan, like ever. I mean, Mary Sue Coleman made sure that a 2-year probation for the Fab Five was a 10-year nuclear winner for the basketball program, just to show again we're reasonable and we're even more remorseful than we need to be. Okay, so that's a great point that you made in terms of what it did to blow up all of Michigan's morale and esprit de corps about pushing back on this thing. And it took months really for really until I would say last fall, when we finally saw Michigan's formal response to the notice of allegations, when they started raising some of the questions that you and I have been raising about this all along. And we're talking about right now. We still, by the way, 74 pages, Isaiah, we still don't know who is an in-person scout for a football program and what is in-person scouting. We still don't know. We still don't know. I mean, if you go and do something for Locked On Big Ten, and that allows you to go to an open practice or scrimmage of another team, or a game of another team, and you notice something on the sidelines before it gets out in the news, and you text it to a source on the Michigan football team, you run a Michigan information site. That source is a friend of yours. You were there in person and saw it. Are you now an in-person scout? See, what the debate should be is about the rules, not about competitive advantage, because literally everything every team does every minute of the day in everything is to gain a competitive advantage. That is not a standard. The standard is, what are your rules and did we break them? So we've been at this for nearly 2 years, brother. We still don't know what an in-person scout is. Does it include just a staff member? Is it a family member, a friend? What if it's somebody that was just at an event, went to a game in a public forum? These were games. They weren't spy netting practices like Belichick and the Jets back in the day. These are public forums anyone could buy a ticket and go into, which is what happened here. So therefore, is anybody in that stadium at any given time who has a relationship with a member of the Michigan football program and they relay information of things they have seen in that public setting, are they an in-person scout then? See, these things were never defined.
Well, here's the absurd thing. The NCAA acknowledges it's okay for sign stealers to exchange information, for coaches to exchange information, which is a significantly more of a, quote, competitive advantage. Like they acknowledge, right, because you actually know what you're seeing and can decipher it in the moment. You actually know what's a formation, what's a dummy signal. You actually know. Yes. You can hire services. You're allowed to hire certain services to be able to scout and things of this nature. This is something that everything Connor did is 100% considered legal at the high school level and the NFL level. It's legal to do it for teams that aren't on your schedule. It's okay if Connor goes and scouts Georgia, sends his mom to a Georgia game, or sends his mom to a TCU game, whatever it might be. That's fully okay. But if they're on your schedule already, and even if they're on your schedule and it's like the playoff, you're still allowed to do it. It's just the fact that they were on your schedule. It's arbitrary at best. Mm-hmm. And I can understand where it's like, okay, these are rules, but they just, like you said, they didn't really define the rule, right? Like to say it's okay for the coaches to trade this information. If a coach has already gone up against,
I was there last week. I watched their signals. I give you the signals. I watched them deploy last week. If you give me the signals of the team you played last week that we're playing next week that you saw in person, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Yeah. That makes no sense at all. The whole thing doesn't make any sense.
But to have his 50-year-old mother go and sit in the stands and with her iPhone and just send it out, like that's anathema to the sport. That's as we say on Locked On Wolverines, that's cheating. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, two things can be true. I can sit there and say, like, okay, they found a reason and they went ahead, and most of it was because of all of these punishments of the 4-4, as they called it, of the punishments that were levied. I can sit there and accept the fact that they levied them, right? But at the same time, I can also tell you it's beyond stupid, right? Like it makes no sense. The NCAA did nothing smart here. And I think ultimately, especially with the language that was in the 74-page report, kind of saying like, oh, this warranted a bowl ban, but we didn't do it. I think what they're trying to do essentially is they're trying to play both sides, right? The NCAA is trying to be like, they're trying to appease the rivals who are mad and also appease Michigan, but like, we're not actually going to punish you, but we are going to admonish you at the same time, right? It's typical political doublespeak of, I'm going to say one thing that's going to make all of these other people happy because it's going to make it seem like, yeah, you absolutely went well above the line. Because let's also keep in mind that other schools are doing this. Like Dan Wetzel confirmed that in the Sign Sealers documentary. Other schools are doing this. Has it come out? No. Is it going to come out? I don't know, because like it's not exactly like these other schools are going to volunteer. They weren't going to be like, actually, NCAA, we are doing the exact same thing as Connor. We just wanted to make sure that you knew that this is widespread, right? Like that wasn't going to happen. So it's all just absolutely political stupidity of the NCAA to kind of talk, say, we would punish them this way, but we're not going to, because that just allows the rival fans to write up other message board genius things saying like, oh, we need to vote Michigan out and sue them for making it so Jack Sawyer couldn't get his gold pants. All right, if you think that they deserve that punishment, then punish them with it.
Right.
And give an actual reason why outside of they were trying to win a football game. Well, duh.
I maintain the biggest mistake made here was Sharon deleting those texts. And then, according to the report, if it's accurate, at the very least, he deleted those texts. If the report is accurate, then wasn't clear cut on why he deleted them, especially because then they went through them and found nothing incriminating at all. All right, it's a little bit like, again, going back to the analogy of the guy trying to flush his pot down the toilet into the boys' room. He thinks that the narc is coming for him, and he thinks he just flushed his pot down the toilet, and really it was just some number 2 pencils. It wasn't, it wasn't contraband at all. And so you took a hit there for nothing. You look suspicious for nothing, because with Chris Partridge exonerated, with Tim Smith exonerated as the bag man here that put up the $35K allegedly to make all of this possible, that wasn't true either. The only piece of behavior they're left from Michigan to validate their narrative is Sharon deleting those texts, Isaiah. And I think that is the most damaging action that took place, and is really the only corroborating credibility the NCAA has for its narrative whatsoever, was frankly our head coach doing what he did at the time.
Yeah, I kind of like Sharon had said around this time last year, he looked forward to the text getting out. I wish that he would just put them out so that everyone can see that it was just a stupid knee jerk. And yeah, you shouldn't have been, because it like people act like it's high treason that he did it, but like it takes all of 2 seconds of bad thinking to delete a text chain on an iPhone. You swipe, you hit a button, it's gone. But like at that point, yes, he should have been forthcoming. That's kind of what their whole point was, is Michigan's lied throughout this process.
Yeah,
well,
see, there's another example. Exactly. Yes.
And I can't disagree with that, right? Like there were lies that were told throughout this process. Some of them were things that duped the NCAA, and they acknowledged, but said basically, I use this analogy with you. I won't go into the whole thing that I used with you, but it's kind of like when I got a speeding ticket when I lived in Ann Arbor. I knew there was a cop there. I slowed down purposely to below the speed limit well before I got to the cop. He pulled me over and said I was going faster anyway. Gave me extra tickets to try to make his case better. I don't know why. I got to court. I proved him wrong to the point where he admitted he was wrong, and the court still ruled that he was correct. Like, that's what this is, right? Like it's a kangaroo court at that point, right? Like, oh, we find the most trustworthy person involved in the process to be the person that just admitted they lied. But if Michigan had not had moments like the Sharon, like if with the deleted text, you could just explain it away exactly as the likely truth is yeah, I saw his name and I panicked, instead of making up a story and all of this stuff. Like, we're both Christ followers. Like, the truth will set you free. And in this case, the lies are what essentially damaged Michigan even more, because that gave
Michigan should have just said, what rule did we break? Here's exactly what we did. I mean, you need to define for us what's an in-person scout, what in-person scouting is in this era. And we're arguing over a method to collect information. It's not even against any rule to actually have. And so that was what I would have advocated from the very beginning. I'd have just come right out and said, and just dismissed it like this is the dumbest stuff ever. But some of their actions after the fact, including Sharon deleting those texts, helped feed a narrative for the NCAA that its own report and the evidence therein or lack thereof, frankly, does not support. Let's conclude this by getting to this season and what, if any, impact you think this will have. We're going to have 2 games where our head coach is not there. Right, we have a brand new offensive coordinator who's completely outside the Michigan system. So, will he coach? Will that take away? He's got head coaching experience, but does that take away from him overseeing the offense? Do you have the more experienced defensive coordinator there, but does that do the same for him? Do you take a guy who was kind of the team's life coach before, in a way, who's back here again and has some head coaching experience? Do you let him handle it? Because we're really talking about the Nebraska game. I mean, Michigan's going to name the score against Central Michigan. So what impact at all does any of this have on this season? It's kind of funny, everybody had a cow on Friday. Today, Michigan got a commitment from the number one running back recruit in the country. So much for the narrative that the forthcoming leans means Michigan doesn't have the money to recruit at this level anymore. I guess Sabian Hyder's coming here for free, just likes Ann Arbor that much, I guess. That's cool. But your thoughts on what, if any, impact this is going to have on this team and this season?
I think because Sharon's still a relatively young head coach and is still finding his footing to some degree, I don't think it's going to have a massive impact, honestly. Like, it had much more of an impact, I think, to lose Jim Harbaugh because he had a much younger coaching staff in general, right? Like, you looked across what he had in those 3 games. It's like he had a guy in Sharon Moore who had not had any, like, he was a relatively, like, it was his first year as the sole bona fide offensive coordinator, right? A couple years beforehand, he's the tight ends coach, right? Like, an extremely green one at that. And then, like, you just didn't have a lot of really good options in terms of people who had coaching experience. Whereas now you look at what they have, you've got experience all across the board. Like, okay, yeah, if you go with Wink, congratulations. If Wink does have to take some off of his table, you've got a whole group of defensive guys who every single coach on that side of the ball has been a defensive coordinator. I think if you go with Chip, yeah, I think he'll be able to handle a little bit of both because he has the head coaching experience and because he also could lean on Wink and kind of treat it the way that Michigan's kind of been for a while, which is, that the defensive coordinator really is the coach of the defense, right? Instead of the head coach necessarily trying to delve too much into it and micromanage that whole thing. I love the idea of Biff Poggi. I don't know that they're going to go that role. And he's a guy that obviously head coach at Charlotte, head coach at St. Francis Academy. I just think that you've got so much experience in those coaching rooms now that it doesn't really matter because it's not the same way as it was in 2023. Obviously, Michigan got through the 6 total games that Jim Harbaugh was suspended. Despite all of that, there weren't any big blowouts in those games. Some of them were a little rocky, obviously the Maryland game being chief among them. I don't think you necessarily have to worry about that as much. It's not going to be like a situation where, yeah, you look at 2023, there were some of those games you're like, I wonder if Jim Harbaugh was the coach, if they beat ECU, even more convincingly than they did, or, if the Bowling Green game doesn't have some of the problems that it ended up having, or if Maryland feels a lot more comfortable. Like, I don't think you have to worry about that as much because Sharon has one blowout to his name so far as a head coach. And it came in late season, penultimate regular season game against Northwestern. So it isn't like one of those things where without the head coach that maybe leaves, a score, 2 scores, 3 scores on the table. I don't think that that's necessarily the case with Sharon. Now, I think that he'll probably be able to do enough to kind of cement like what he wants as a game plan. This year, if I'm reading the rules correctly here, he's not going to be allowed from the beginning of the Central Michigan game until it strikes midnight after, basically the day of the Central Michigan game till the end of the day of the Nebraska game is when he won't be able to be around. If I'm reading what they wrote correctly, which somewhat supersedes the rule that they had already put out there about not being able to coach game week. But as long as he's able to kind of communicate his vision, he's got people that are going to be able to handle that with flying colors. He's got way more experience in coaches from the offensive side to the defensive side than he is himself. So I think that's really going to bode very well. And I think that there's a lot of experienced players that should know how to handle that too. So we'll see. It's tough playing at Nebraska and not having your head coach. I mean, it's still going to be a big deal, but I think that they'll be able to have enough time to plan that and have enough maturity in terms of the coaches as well as the personnel to be able to handle whatever that is. I don't think it's going to be like, yeah, if they had Sharon, they would have scored 7 or 14 points more. I think that they'll be fine as far as that's concerned.
Well said. And I got to tell you, I heard Chris Ballas, the Wolverines, say today that, Matt Rule has run his mouth a lot over there the last 2 years. And to have Michigan go in there and beat him with an interim coach, there'd be some satisfaction in that for sure. So completely concur there. Isaiah, thanks again, man, for carving out time to do this. I know you're super busy with camp and all that stuff going on. We appreciate it, man. And make sure to folks, you want to listen to Locked On Wolverines, read Wolverines Wire as well. Thank you, Isaiah.
Of course. Always my pleasure.
Take care. This week's X-Poll results, we asked you, what's your biggest worry as Michigan enters the 2025 season? 36% of you said the early road schedule. 36% of you said starting a freshman quarterback. 28% said left tackle. That number might go up with the Andrew Babalola news. He wasn't going to beat out Evan Link from what I understand, but he would have been certainly in the two deep and a contributor there. So that's a ding to your depth. Not to mention, he's a late bloomer from a recruiting perspective. He was a basketball star, switched to football just a few years ago. So even if he wasn't going to beat out Evan Link, you still want him healthy and getting all those reps and developing all those 5-star tools. But alas, that's the one serious injury, knock on wood, we have suffered thus far in fall camp, but hopefully there won't be any others. That brings us to our feedback of the week. This is from Kevin, who says, regarding Bryce Underwood, I get his ceiling and that he started 4 years of varsity high school football, but he's a true freshman. Games will be close because of him. We may lose a few games because of him. If he plays decent to well, we're at least 10-2. If he plays poorly, we're 8-4 at best. That's the biggest worry. I can completely see that analysis coming to fruition. The one caveat, I think, Kevin, and I think overall that's pretty sound, brother, is the system that Michigan runs, even with the new offensive coordinator, is not required to be quarterback dependent. All right, so he's going to have to make a few plays. It is the most important position in all of American team sports, quarterback of a football team. So he's going to have to make a few plays, but the offense is largely not going to run through him. And we have seen teams, whether it's Cade McNamara in 2021, Brian Griese all the way to a natty in 1997. We have seen Michigan football win plenty of games throughout the course of our fandoms and lifetimes without emphasizing the quarterback position to the rate many other programs in our peer group do. Now, we didn't recruit Bryce Underwood to make him a game manager, ultimately, but he may be that much of this season. And frankly, that's probably the best path to success, given the fact he is a true freshman. In fact, he just turned 18 today, as of August 19th, the date that we're taping this. So he's not just a true freshman, but a young one as well. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, comment here in the comment section. Help us to find more Michigan football fans just like you, because that helps the Michigan Podcast to continue to grow. And we appreciate that. You can also follow us on X in between episodes too, at Michigan Podcast on X. That's at Michigan Podcast on X. Until the next time, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.